everyone, it's Kathy. Thank you so much for joining me today. So it's time again to do a collaboration with my friend Marla over at Mad About Cards and Crafts. And this month we decided to choose a technique from Jennifer McGuire's channel that we've always wanted to try. Marla and I have had a conversation more than once about how both of us tend to be sort of lazy crafters. So the technique that I chose was the Interlocking Gatefold Technique. So the products that I'll be using are from PinkFresh Studio. The stamp set is called Believe in Yourself, and the background stamp is Nested Diamond, and it's a really cool stamp, and I'm going to talk more about that a little bit later. And then of course some circle dies. So I started out with a piece of 80-pound Neenah Classic Crest cardstock that measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I put it in my MISTI. I stamped the bunch of flowers using Versafine Clair Pinecone ink, and then I just did the layering stamping. The inks that I used are from Catherine Pooler Designs, and I'll make sure to have everything that I used linked in the description box below. And I also wanted to mention that I picked up these two stamp sets from my friend Sin over at Stampin' Munchkins. She's got a great little online store with lots of fantastic products. I did check over there to see if she had the nested diamond background stamp, but I think she's out of stock. However, she does have the nested chevron stamp, and that's just as cool. And Marla actually used the nested chevron stamp in her video for our collaboration in June. So I'll make sure to link to Sin's channel as well as her store and Marla's video where she used the nested chevron stamp. So anyway, back to the card. To do the two-step stamping for this, the images are really very forgiving. You don't have to get them lined up perfectly, which I like, especially with the two-step type of stamp, because I don't really like to have to fuss with stuff for too long. Again, lazy crafter. So the peach colored daisy-like flower, I used Bellini ink for that, and then for the flower center I used Tiki torch. For the yellow flower I used for the spidery chrysanthemum looking flower I used Tiki torch. And then for the red flower, I used, what did I use? Tutti Frutti. After I finished stamping that panel, I set that off to the side. I took another piece of 80-pound Neenah Classic Crest cardstock cut to 8 1/2 by 5 1/2. And with the 8 1/2 side up at the top of my scoreboard, I scored it from the left side at 2 1/8 inch. Then I flipped the cardstock around and scored again at 2 1/8 of an inch. That is your basic gatefold card. I did use my bone folder just to really get a good crisp fold for those score lines. Then I pulled in the MISTI and I used a little bit of temporary adhesive on the back of my card to hold it in place in the MISTI. And then I also used a little on the inside of the card to keep the flaps closed while I did my stamping. Then it kind of dawned on me that there's no way I was going to be able to line up that diamond stamp, so I end up doing the old trick of putting the cardstock on top of the stamp, and I did add a little bit more of the temporary adhesive just to make sure. Then I closed the back of the MISTI and pressed down, and when I opened it back up, my cardstock was stuck to the base of my MISTI, although it wasn't quite straight, so I had to fiddle with that a little bit. And I also forgot to remove the foam piece, because this is a cling mounted stamp, so I did need to remove that. I inked up the background stamp with Catherine Pooler's Tiara ink, and I was just in awe of how beautifully this stamped. This is the first time I used the stamp, and I got some splotchiness, but it wasn't horrible. So more about this background stamp. All of those diamonds actually come out. You can take the different size diamonds out and stamp them in different colors. And the first time, and the reason that I purchased this stamp, was actually on a video that Sin from Stampin' Munchkins had done. She made a really cute little coffee card, so I'll make sure to link to her video as well, so you can see the diamond stamp in action as well. Anyway, moving along. I did need to create some frames, so I used 2 circle dies and I cut it 3 times from a piece of coral colored cardstock. And I did use painter's tape to hold those dies in place because it's just a little bit stronger. Then I used a smaller circle die to cut out the flower bunch, and to hold that die in place I just used my go-to Scotch removable tape. And once I had run the flower bunch through my die cut machine, I thought that the white behind the flowers was a little bit too stark. So I decided to bring in some Altenew Buttercream Ink and a makeup blending brush just to add a little bit of color behind those flowers so it wasn't so stark. Then I decided to add some details with a white gel pen, and I didn't look at the number of the pen that I grabbed, and this is a 1.0, and in hindsight I kind of wish I would have done a 0.08 instead. This tip is it's pretty broad, and I think that I would have preferred to have finer details, but it turned out okay. In the end, I'm okay with it. There were a couple of leaves on within that flower bunch that there's not a stamp for, so I just grabbed my YG03 marker and filled that in really quickly. So to put my card together, I had die cut that coral frame 3 times and stacked them together so that the frame would be a little bit more stable. Then I used a piece of painter's tape to hold the card closed so that I could adhere my frame. Now the trick to this one is to remember only to put adhesive on one side of the frame, and in this case it's going to be the left side of the frame. And I've also recently started using the Nouveau Deluxe adhesive, and I prefer this glue, I think, over Tombow. I think it's a little bit thinner, so I have less of an opportunity to get glue all over the place, because if you've been here before, you know that liquid glue is not necessarily my friend. Anyway, to get the flower bunch adhered into place, again, you only want to put adhesive on one side of it, otherwise you'll glue the card shut. So for the circle piece with the flower bunch, I only put adhesive on the right hand side and then pressed that into place. To finish it up, I die cut the word hello 3 times from black cardstock, and then I stacked those up. And I had also die cut the word hello from white cardstock so that I could add a shadow behind the word hello just to make it stand out a tiny bit more. I used my liquid glue to adhere the sentiment to the front of the card, and there, see, liquid glue is not my friend. I drop it or it squishes out. So anyway, after I cleaned up the liquid glue on my craft mat, I put my die cut word into place on the front of the card. And then of course I wanted to add a little bit of shimmer, so I grabbed my Wink of Stella glitter pen and quickly added some sparkle to the word hello. And that's it. That finishes up my card for today. So be sure to head on over to Marla's channel and check out her video. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you've not yet subscribed, I'd love it if you would. And don't forget to ring the bell so you're notified every time a new video is posted. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.